Okay, do you want me to close the canopy at the same time as you?
It doesn't matter, as long as we're both doing it.
I'll close it now.
It doesn't have to be synchronized as such. It's just a case of you let me know when you're doing it, and I'll make sure I'm doing whatever you're doing on this end as well.
Hello and welcome to the continuation of my journey in DCS as a completely new flyer. Originally I was overwhelmed with it all and I've started to learn in the 399B, but I thought it was time. It was time. So I reached out to DCS Tactical and a great guy called Dog jumped out and said, would you like some training? I'm more than welcome to help you. So in this series of 5 or so videos, he's going to be training me by sitting in the back seat of this craft, and he's going to be teaching me about the dials, the procedures, and things that we all want to know as a new flyer without overwhelming us with weapons systems and radars and all this, so that this craft is perfect. But we will be jumping ship, or jumping craft should I say, to another aircraft further into my training, but this is going to be part 1. I hope this is as useful to you as it was for me if you're a new flyer and thinking of getting into DCS. I hope you find some benefit from this. So let's seat in, let's buckle up, and let's get sky high here in part 1.
And RPM is idle at what, 41, 42%?
40, yeah, about around 42, yeah.
That's fine.
Beacon light is on.
Yep, as desired for your lighting. Absolutely. You've got control of all that. I can't see any of that from my end.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's everything set.
Excellent. So yeah, if the caution and warning panel is empty, then i.e. there's nothing lit up, like your anti-skid light or anything like that, then the aircraft thinks it's ready to fly. You just need to then have it configured how you want it. So for example, remember your parking brake and your nose wheel steering. And then what we're going to do is, we're probably at a slightly different airfield from what you're used to. We're at Batumi. So what you're going to do is, in your own time, we'll taxi forward and then we'll take a left turn, and that will eventually result in us joining the kind of the taxi guidelines.
Okay.
We're going to join the taxiway on the second left, which from memory is Bravo, as I recall. Yes, taxiway Bravo B. And then we'll start our takeoff from that part of the runway. So when you're ready, release the parking brake and start taxiing the aircraft forward.
Okay, parking brake is off.
Brilliant.
Pushing it up to 50.
Yep. Now, you might notice you need a little bit more power than what you're normally used to, because we're carrying a little extra fuel in the tip tanks. That's okay though. Now just up ahead, you're going to see a bit to your right, 1 o'clock, you'll see a single line that diverges into 2. That's where you want to have your nose wheels along. That's the taxiway centre lines. Just a little bit more to the right.
Oh, I see.
That's
it
there.
Yeah, sorry, it's because I'm in VR. It comes in a little bit.
I know.
Bit janky, but yeah, I've got
It's okay. So follow that yellow line. Basically, you're aiming to put your centre line, your centre nose on that line, and follow it all the way along. And if you follow up to the right there, you'll see taxiway Bravo. Nope, continue straight ahead.
Oh, sorry.
This is Alpha.
That's one of the things that I always got confused when I've been practicing. As you've probably seen on that video, I actually didn't know which end was the takeoff end and which end was the land end. I can't seem to work out when I'm in the air which is which. So
the reason why you have 2 runway numbers, like runway 31 and runway it's reciprocal, runway 31 and then runway 13. That is the heading of the runway. So 31 is heading 310. Runway 13 is heading 130. You see this line ahead crossing us? That's the whole short light. So you would normally be expected to stop and wait for ATC clearance. I happen to know that we're the only aircraft in the entire planet for my mission. Okay. So we're going to be, all you would really do is be in the habit of just looking up and to the left there, making sure nothing's on approach, and that nothing's on taking off or on approach on the other side of the runway there. So we're good. Now, what dictates the position of the runway in terms of which way is the active runway, i.e. whether you're taking off or landing on that direction, is the wind. So if the wind is blowing in a certain direction, you generally want to take off into the wind with the wind blowing towards you. puts as much force over the wings as possible.
Do you want me just to go out?
So, yeah, by all means, please do. Go ahead and taxi onto the runway and just put yourself on the centre line of it. So at the moment there's no wind, so what we'll just do is we follow the taxiways that we're given. Basically the ATC would tell us which way they want us to move, but given that I am today the instructor and the ATC, I'm going to tell you to line up and line up on runway 31. So the call would be on an ATC. In a real life ATC situation, they would tell you something like line up and wait, runway 31, something like that, which is literally just as we are right now. Line up and we're waiting for clearance.
If you're in the ramp and you've just started from cold, and you get in touch with ATC and they say taxi to runway B31, as it were.
Yep.
How do I know from the ramp where that is? Is that just you bring up the map and look for it?
Well, that's the easiest way. The other one, you'll notice if you hold down right shift and K for kilo, you would have a little
knee pad.
Knee pad, yeah. So in this knee pad, when you use the left and right square brackets, there is actually airport diagrams.
Open knee.
The right, open your knee, and then left and right pages. You'll eventually find, for example, the Toomey airfield, and you would find the taxiway instructions. This one's relatively simple. There's an Alpha taxiway and a Bravo taxiway, so this one's really easy.
Okay, I'll just close that. Close knee.
Yeah.
Knee close. Typical. How do you close it?
The keyboard combination is right shift and K for kilo.
Right shift and K. Alright, okay.
That gets rid of it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get the idea.
Yeah.
Be aware that it exists, but the other thing you would maybe be doing in an ideal world is you might find yourself on a more organised event. They might tell you in advance as part of the mission briefing, okay, we'll be landing and taking off from this runway. This is the wind condition. And for example, if the wind was blowing towards us, then runway 31 would be the active runway.
Okay.
If the wind was going the opposite way, we might well have to go all the way to the end of the runway at runway 13, the opposite end, and take off that way.
Because we always take off into the wind.
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
And that's how you know what your active runway is.
So it's a bit of prep before, because I was coming in and thinking, well, how am I supposed to work that out now I'm sat in the plane? But you kind of have to know that before you taxi away.
Being a pilot in general and a sim pilot in specifically is the only thing I really know much about in this kind of area of expertise. But I will tell you right now, the 7 Ps: planning and preparation prevents piss poor performance.
Okay. Yeah. Totally.
It's exactly how this all works, and you hear all the kind of slang terms that pilots talk about, being behind the jet or being ahead of the jet. What they're really talking about is, am I thinking ahead? Do I have everything prepared for me? Do I have an understanding? Knowing the flight, knowing the weather, knowing the plan. Okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, the plan for us for takeoff today will be we'll stand on the wheel brakes, run the throttle up to 100%. When we're comfortable, we'll release the brakes and we'll take off the nose wheel steering at 50 knots.
Yep.
From there, we'll use the rudder to maintain center line, and once we pass 130 knots, we will rotate and get airborne. We'll climb to 5,000 feet, and then we'll roll wings level.
Okay.
Gear up no later than 190 knots. Flaps up no later than 180.
Okay, let me just check my voice command for gear up.
Yep.
Okay. I'm not going to say it now, but it's LG.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. As long as you're comfortable with it, that's fine. If you get caught out with your voice attack on you, it's just the key is G for the gear.
Yeah. Okay.
On the keyboard. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
And it is important, because if you overspeed the gear and go beyond 200 knots, there's a good chance that you'll damage the gear from being shoved through the wind that hard, and it may not work.
Got you.
Which will cause you problems. In your own time, go ahead and run the throttles up while you have the brakes held down.
Okay.
Don't worry, the aircraft can be held on the brakes. Once you're at 100% and you're comfortable, release the brakes, and once you pass 50 knots indicated on the speed gauge, turn off the steering cues. So As you can see, it's quite unstable at this point. So nose wheel steering. There you go. You're much better now. And you're just using small inputs from the rudder. There we go. 110, 120, 130, rotate. So gently pull back on the stick, and we're in there. There we go. Gently pull aft on the stick a little more just to keep yourself positive rate. There we go.
Flaps
And
up.
gear.
G. There we go.
Yeah, get the gear up first. You can, if you damage the flaps, you can do a no flaps landing. If you damage the gear, that's a mess.
Got you. Yeah. It's voice attack. It doesn't always understand my Yorkshire slang, I think.
No, it's not very good at Scots accents either. Okay, so we're going to continue the climb at this rate up to about 5,000 feet.
Is that on full burst?
Sorry?
Is that on full burn?
Yeah. You don't have an afterburner in the 339. There is no afterburner.
Okay.
It's what we see is 100% or slightly over 100% for the power. This is mil power or military power. It's the maximum rated power that the engine can push.
Got you.
There are situations, for example, other aircraft like the F-16 or the A4, where you can actually be at 103% and things like that, and that's because they've had their engines upgraded over their lives. But when they ask for mil power, you still go to 100%, even if there's a little extra in the bank. So that's us at 6,000 feet, so we're just going to slightly descend back down to 5 grand. She likes to climb quite heavily, so feel free to use the trim to get yourself under control and hold a good speed. What you'll notice as well is that now that you're coming down, as you dive, your aircraft speed increases.
Yeah.
So you can use the throttle to obviously handle that and manage that. Try not to use huge movements in the throttle with the 339.
Okay.
You'll notice, for example, that between 40 and 60% RPM, it takes an age for the jet to spool and get the power going, and then the throttle response is a bit more prompt between 60 and 100.
Okay, I'm just trying to trim it out. There we go.
Yep, excellent. So you've got the center the artificial horizon, the ADI.
Yep. What does that stand for? Something director, isn't it?
Artificial director and indicator, if I remember rightly.
Yep.
You have 2 arrows in the bottom at the 6 o'clock position. When those 2 arrows touch, you are wings level. So you're slightly rolling right at the moment, and bring it in a little bit more. That is you wings level.
I've noticed it constantly wants to pull to the right. I don't know whether that's my setup.
There is some situations where if the axes are overly sensitive, it can hang slightly right. So you can open up the dead zone a little and narrow that out.
That may be that then. Yeah. I'm trying to trim it.
These are things These are things you can adjust. For now, just be mindful of it. You might find yourself doing small adjustments every now and then.
Okay.
And generally speaking, what you're looking to do is you'll notice that there's tick markers around the arrows. So the small dashes are 10, 20, then the big dash is 30 degrees angle of bank.
Yep.
The next big one further around is 60 degrees angle of bank. And then there's a line actually on the ball between the 30 and the 60 degrees, which represents 45 degrees angle of bank. And all you do is you just make the arrows touch the points where you want to roll. So if I asked for a 30 degree angle of bank on the right roll, what would you do? There's 10, there's 20, there's 30. Brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, my joystick's really sensitive. That's what it's oversteering a little bit. But yeah.
That'll be it. That's fine. The more precision we can get, the better. But at this stage, we're just more interested in getting you familiar with what we're asking you.
Okay.
You'll notice that there's a black and white dashed line in the center, which is 0 degrees. Now, because of various things involving aerodynamics, you might find that your wings are level, but your nose is slightly high when you're flying. This is normal. You'll also notice vertically you have lines from 30 degrees, then 20, then 10, and 0, and the dots in between represent 5s, so 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, and so on. That's your vertical. That's vertical pitch. So we've done roll, we've done pitch. You've also got indicators in the center. There's a small ball, a little bit like a spirit level, just below the ADI.
Yep.
Generally speaking, you want the ball to be in the centre between the two dashed lines, and that is your rudder central. You will almost never touch the rudder in the 339 when you're flying. It's a very stable jet as it is. But if you're pulling some sort of crazy manoeuvres, you might find the aircraft is slipping slightly to the left and the right, and the rudder will help you correct that.
I noticed on the bottom as well, there's a shape further near the right-hand knob as well.
Yeah, that's a reference indicator for that knob, which isn't functional in the 339.
Right, okay.
So basically, it's a way of manually adjusting or caging the ADI. So if the ADI was slightly out, if you knew you were wings level and it wasn't showing wings level, you can turn the wheel slightly to kind of recenter it.
Fine adjustment, yeah.
Yeah. Generally speaking, you would only touch that if you suspected the gyro was a bit faulty or dodgy, or if you had to manually adjust it yourself due to a failure in flight. These things almost never happen in DCS because every time you start up a brand new jet in DCS, it is factory fresh and has 0 miles and zero hours on the jet. So you never almost worry about these things unless some real sadist wants to put failures into the mission. From the ADI to the right, you have your altimeter or your altimeter. Represented in thousands of feet, you have we're currently at 9,100 feet. If we were to go up another 1,000, that grey barber pole to the left to the left of the 9 would change to a number. You'd have 1, and then 10,000 feet, and so on.
Can I have a question?
You have a question. You might get an answer.
When we're on the runway and the altimeter isn't at 0, am I supposed to reset that?
No. This depends on what country you come from. Because the best thing about standards is having another standard, right? In the UK, you'll have, or in many countries, you'll have the QNH, QFE, and basic QFE stands for field elevation. In other words, you make the altimeter 0 because that's where the aircraft is. QNH is the pressure at sea level, and you may well find you are not at sea level if you're flying in the mountains, for example. Some countries would prefer you to be referenced to sea level for ATC directions, and some countries would prefer you referenced to the local altitude, so to speak.
Got you.
So, for example, I would if it was me, I would prefer, just because of the way I've always learned things, I would prefer to operate off of local altitudes. But the problem with that is, as you can see, it's very hilly outside. So the local altitude means nothing when we travel another 20 miles inland. So you would need to get regular updates on what your setting is supposed to be.
Got you.
What you usually find is that most countries have what's called a transition altitude. So, for example, in the United States, it's 15,000 feet in most cases. When you pass beyond that, there is a standard that everybody has agreed to that you set your altimeter at, which incidentally is 1013 millibars as we have them. Other units of measurement that you'll hear are millimeters of mercury, which is what you'll see in the inches of mercury, which is what you'll see in the F-18, which is 2. And that setting is 2909 or 2. But don't worry, you don't have to worry about memorising all these things at this stage.
These are
just things you need to know.
Is there any way for me to get rid of the white text that says "Player Demon Actual in"?
Just hit Tab on your keyboard, and that enables or disables the chat. That's just enable or disable the chat log. There we go, a little bit less distracting for you. Below the altimeter, you have the VSI, or the vertical speed indicator. It's currently ticking at 0.5, which is 500 feet per minute, vertically up. So when you want to be flying level in level flight, you generally want that as close to 0 as you can get. If we change that to 1 up, then what you're really talking about is 1,000 feet per minute.
Yeah, got you.
2, 4, and 6, and so on. The reason why it only goes as far as 6 is because 6,000 feet per minute is practically straight down. If you're going faster than that, you're not going to be going fast for long. Because you're going to be in the ground. To the right of that, you have your RPM, your jet engine's RPM. It's rated in percentages, so 0 is not running at all, 100 is full tilt, maximum rated thrust. Anything faster than that is dangerous, hence the big red line. The green zone is the generally considered regular operating limit. So you never really run it at 100% all the time in the 339, apart from things like takeoff, where you need every bit of thrust you can get.
So I presume we want to, when we're cruising, we want to keep it in the green band. Is that the most efficient?
It's the most efficient area, and it's also, if this aircraft is updated later, you remember the jet pipe, the JPT limiter button you heard?
Should I have turned that off? It's still on, by the way.
No, you should have it turned on, because
Right.
what that does is it's a safety protection system to stop you from overheating the engine. JPT, jet pipe temperature.
Got you.
So basically, it is possible, if you were not paying attention to that and had it turned off, to run the aircraft to 100%, slowly overheat through the exhaust temperatures, the engine and the back of the jet. This is a great way to cause an engine fire, and you only have one engine, so let's not do that.
Yeah.
Below that you have exhaust temperature. Remember what we were saying about the JPT?
Yep.
So this is how you read that. Once again, inside the green zone, very good. Under 200 degrees, or 2000 degrees in this particular case, is the red line at the bottom. Your jet is not producing anywhere near enough thrust and is cold. Above the red line at the top, you are very likely to be causing a fire, because if that's in hundreds, you are pushing 750 degrees Celsius.
Yeah.
It's a little toasty.
Yeah.
Below that you have oil pressure. Once again, anywhere in the green band is good. Oil pressure is used to, well, keep the engine running. It's just the same as having oil in your car.
Yeah.
To the right of that, you'll have fuel expressed in kilograms in this jet. American aircraft will usually express it in pounds. And then below that, you'll have your cabin pressure altitude, which generally speaking, you want to be below 10,000 feet. If it goes above 10,000 feet because of how high we are, then we need to be on oxygen.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise, you'll black out. And yes, this is modelled in DCS. You can black out from hypoxia. It's not fun. Somewhere around about that section for you, the problem is my layout is slightly different from yours.
Yeah,
You'll also have one for fuel flow, and that is
Yep.
in kilograms per hour. So if you're set at 90% RPM, the fuel flow will be just about 15, for example, and that lets you know that you're burning basically 15 units per hour. Or is it per minute? I can never remember on this jet. Bottom line is that higher fuel flow means you're burning more fuel.
Yeah, I've got you.
What you'll find is at higher altitudes, you burn less fuel.
Because the air's thinner, less resistance. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you're burning less. There's less resistance through the air, which means you don't need as much thrust. But also because of the fact there's less air, the engine isn't getting as much power, which means it doesn't need as much fuel.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Between your legs, returning back to the ADI, between your legs below that, you have the HSI, or the Horizontal Situation Indicator, because the Air Force loves three-letter acronyms. The needles will swing around in the direction you're travelling, and it's fairly self-explanatory. It's your compass, by want of a better term.
Yeah. Okay. I never know
Use
when to
my-
set the dials or the heading, or what I'm doing with it.
To be perfectly honest, on the MB339, you're almost never going to touch them, because you can turn them as a reminder, like if you want to hold a certain course and so on like that, but they would really only come to themselves if we were using radio navigation, which the 339 does not have modelled.
Okay.
Okay. Further to that, you have to the left of that the flight director options. If the flight director isn't, if the radios aren't modelled, then neither is the flight director. So it's fluff. You don't need it right now.
Yeah. Okay.
Above that, you have a standby ADI. This is for if your primary ADI fails, or you think it's failing, you can obviously check that, and it's just a backup.
Okay.
Above that, you have your airspeed measured in hundreds of knots. So right now we're doing about 230 knots at the moment.
One thing I was going to ask, on the ADI,
Yes.
that yellow line,
It's part of the flight director. So in a working flight director where you'd assigned a course, the yellow line horizontally would tell you to steer. Would be telling you right now to steer left. And then there would be a vertical one that would come out of view, would come into view to indicate pitch. For example, if you're on an ILS approach or something like that.
So that's not modelled.
Not
yet.
modelled. Yeah,
Right,
it's not modelled yet.
That's why I couldn't work it out.
It's not modelled at this time, so you can ignore it. Back to the speed indicator, the small gauge in the middle is a Mach. It's the speed of sound. So we're just under 0.4 Mach at the moment.
Got you.
So we're just under half of the speed of sound.
And what's the yellow line? Is that the minimum speed for?
It's a reference. So you see the set index?
Yeah.
Now I don't know if it works for you. It doesn't work for me in my back seat. But basically, you can adjust that index.
It doesn't work. No.
In the real jet, you'd be able to roll that around to, for example, your takeoff speed, or perhaps you have been assigned a speed by the ATC, and you can bug that there, so you've got a visual marker of where you want your
okay.
speed.
So that'd be quite handy for formation flying.
To a certain extent, it would be handy for formation flying, but formation flying is less about maintaining a specific airspeed and more position on the jet. So, which you'll find out all about on the next lesson. Don't worry.
Right, okay.
Just to the left of that for you, you have angle of attack.